We don't make these figures up. They're not done willy-nilly. The responsive spokesman Jeff Morrell, when pressed for details about the 61 former Gitmo inmates that the Pentagon claims have returned or might have returned to the, quote, battlefield. Yet in our fourth story in the countdown tonight, increasing evidence that both the willy and the nilly are in full effect. Out of those 61 alleged recidivists, only 18 are actually even confirmed by the Pentagon in their definition of the term. The other 43 are simply, quote, suspected. Though quite how the Defense Department managed to suspect or even confirm recidivism remains unclear, considering that a report from Seton Hall University pointed out that the Pentagon does not actually keep track of released prisoners and their whereabouts, and that the Obama administration is just beginning to realize that there are almost no records of any kind about the detainees still at Gitmo. And the official number of recidivists fluctuates while appearing to be inconsistent with other Defense Department data. The Seton Hall report also pointing out that some of those who allegedly, quote, returned to the battlefield have in fact done little more than utter anti-American comments or appear in a documentary about Guantanamo. As for those 245 or so prisoners still in Gitmo, the Washington Post reporting that many of them have no comprehensive case files, that the information and evidence against them is, according to a senior administration official, quote, scattered throughout the executive branch, which means it takes weeks or even months just to find out the information to begin the case-by-case review ordered by President Obama last week. We're joined now by former U.S. military interrogator and author of How to Break a Terrorist, Matthew Alexander. Thanks for your time again tonight, sir.
Thanks for having me again, Keith.
Let's start with this idea of recidivism. The poster boy for it is this man, al-Shiri, who apparently is now the #2 al-Qaeda figure in Yemen. But he was convicted of nothing, and the Bush administration released him from Gitmo. How does he even count as a repeat terrorist? I mean, for all we know, he was innocent when he was detained, and 6 years at Gitmo turned him into a terrorist.
Keith, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know al-Shiri's background. What I can say is that from the time I was in Iraq as an interrogator, Guantanamo Bay was one of the reasons that al-Qaeda was very effective at recruiting foreign fighters to come to Iraq to fight. And this was counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish in the war on terrorism.
Technically, legally, ethically, don't virtually all the ex-detainees at Gitmo have to be viewed as assumed innocent, whether they were or not, because we don't have convictions against them? And then the ones we released, apparently we were released because we weren't going to get convictions against them?
Yeah, I think you have to separate out the legal status of detainees at Guantanamo Bay from interrogations. When you conduct an interrogation for intelligence, everybody is considered guilty or at least has some knowledge that may help you, even if they weren't involved in activities. And that's separate from the criminal side. The important part of the criminal side in showing the true forms of justice, which is innocent until proven guilty, is that undermines al-Qaeda's ability to recruit future fighters because it shows that we stand up for what we believe in.
If we give the Pentagon al-Shiri and others like that, I mean, clearly al-Shiri counts as an ex-detainee who is now doing terrorism, no matter what, he was, working in a bakery beforehand, it doesn't make a difference. But making anti-American comments or appearing in a documentary, I mean, this gets you counted in the terrorist category?
No, I mean, to be counted as a terrorist, right, there has to be intent, and there has to be capability, or there has to be action. So just making anti-American comments doesn't make somebody a terrorist. And it's important for us to make the distinction between people who dislike us because of our policies and people who dislike our way of life. And I disagree completely with stereotyping members of al-Qaeda to say, well, they all just don't like our way of life and they want to change it or bring it down. That's not my experience. It was not my experience in Iraq. From over 1,300 interrogations, I rarely saw anybody that believed in that true ideologue.
The other disconnect in this, we stashed al-Shiri and others, dozens of others, at Gitmo. The Bush administration released them, and they, whether they're 18 of them or 61 of them or 161 of them or whatever number you want to use, they then turned up as terrorists, or worse yet, in documentaries. This would seem to be a crappy track record as opposed to a good reason to keep Gitmo open. Why is it being used as a reason to keep it open?
Well, I don't agree with the whole premise behind this. I mean, whether the number is 68 or whether it's 100, that number is pale in comparison to the number of fighters that have been recruited by al-Qaeda because of Guantanamo. That number would be more in the thousands. The #1 reason that I consistently heard while in Iraq that foreign fighters gave for coming there was because of torture and abuse that occurred at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay. So Guantanamo Bay, if we seriously want to undercut one of al-Qaeda's best recruiting tools. The best thing we can do is close Guantanamo Bay.
As you pointed out so brilliantly in your writing. Last question here. This news about non-existent record keeping about who is there. What would you call a compound where you throw people without trial and then you don't keep track of how they are or how long they've been there or what they're charged with? What is that called?
Well, there's a lot of words for that, Keith. The important part I'm going to say is that the Army regulations are very clear, and so is Geneva Conventions, about accurately recording and tracking detainees to prevent what's called ghosting, which is the detention of detainees without reporting them to the Red Cross or giving them the rights that they deserve under Geneva Conventions. And let me point out one more thing. The man that we caught that gave us Zarqawi was a 2-time detainee, and we still were able to convince him to cooperate.
Wow. Matthew Alexander, former interrogator for the U.S. military, author of How to Break a Terrorist. Great thanks, and great thanks for pulling me back from my extremist viewpoint on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.